Good afternoon. Excellent. This isn't like television, folks. You can talk back. It's hopefully at the Q&A period we'll be doing a little bit more of that. Why are things the way they are and not some other way? It's a question that I'm going to come back to over the next few minutes, and something that I'm going to encourage you to consider as we dig a little bit deeper here today, and we've already dug quite deep, believe me. I think we could all probably just head to the cafeteria, join hands, and probably chat about some of the things in the images that we've seen, and that would be enough. But I'm going to add to it, and as I know our other distinguished guests and speakers are going to do as well. My name is David, and I am the director of SoChange. We're a small capacity building organization. We come alongside nonprofits, corporations, and we're hopefully trying to plant seeds of change of one kind or another. And if you'd like to learn more about that, I'd love to chat with you. My background academically is in philosophy. I've spent 12 years as an electrician in rough construction, 6 years as a relationship manager at the Royal Bank of Canada, if you can believe it or not, and now started SoChange. I've been doing this kind of work for about 15 years, but formally started SoChange about 3 years ago. My wife Elizabeth is very much with me on this and supporting me in many, many different ways. My son Spencer is 6. He knows where Ulaanbaatar is, and my daughter is about to turn 4 and is a delight. A little bit of context for you. I'm not here today as an expert on slavery. Today I'm here as a development worker and as a philosopher. So for me, context is indeed queen. So I wanted to give that to you here before moving into my presentation. My son said to me recently in a conversation, we were chatting about a few different things, and Harry Potter came up, and we are starting to read some of the Harry Potter books to our kids, and his line to me was, "Well, Dad, at least you have more hair than Voldemort." So that was, and I wanted to share something my daughter said to me as well recently, which I thought you would all probably get a little bit of a kick out of. I was actually in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. We had some friends over, and Victoria is going to be 4 in November. Can you tell it's a proud parent up here? And she's going to be 4 in November, and I heard her from the living room say, "When Mummy's not home, Daddy's in charge." I trust that SoChange will be hiring her as a gender specialist one day. That's my plan anyway, so yes. Why are things the way they are and not some other way? I was in Burkina Faso. Actually, I want to share this slide with you here. A friend of mine just recently returned from a cruise. He's an entertainer and he works on cruises, probably a dozen each year. And this was a photo at his table at the Windjammer restaurant. I don't know if it was the worker on the cruise ship actually having some fun, or if this was indeed this person's real name. But I think it's an interesting way to consider and to think. For those of you who have been on a cruise, you might understand a little bit more about what we are. You can tell it's out of focus. He took the shot on his BlackBerry. I was recently in Burkina Faso. And one of the things that they do, in fact, I was there about 6 weeks ago, one of the interesting things that they do there is when trees die in the city of Ouagadougou, what they do is artisans will come alongside the tree, the trunk, and they will carve it and they will cut it up, and you'll end up with this beautiful statue, much like the picture there up on the top left-hand corner. And so we came around the corner. We had been meeting with some government officials about a few issues in projects that we were working on. And there was this statue of this very strong and sturdy woman who was balancing a very large container on her head, probably full of fruit or maize or something along those lines. She had a baby strapped on her back in very classical and safe and homey African fashion, and was pregnant. Quite a statue, and in her right hand, she was carrying a hoe. And I said to the guy driving the car, Ali, I said, "Wow, Ali, do you think there's something else we could find for this woman to do?" I was kind of stunned, in a way, by the image. Gender justice, we have a long way to go. One of my favorite places in the world is Cambodia. This is two of my favorite women. This is Sopiane on the left and Narat on the right. Narat works in HIV/AIDS in a community which you'll see another photo of in a second, called the Lavia M District. And she works with people living with HIV/AIDS. And Sopiane comes out of that community and is now working for a small NGO in the city of Phnom Penh. We had been in meetings for the afternoon, and we came out of the office and we came out onto the street, and before you can see the door's been already opened for me, I'm walking towards the van. And Narat and Sopiane are already sitting in the back seat of the van, of the pickup truck. And as I approach the van, I say, no, there's no way you guys can sit in the front seat of the truck. That's okay. Thank you for thinking of me. There was no way they would have it any other way. There was no way that it could be otherwise. This was accepted. But what I was particularly annoyed with and on some level disgusted by were my co-workers, Bruce and Noel, who had already found themselves piling into the car without a thought, without a word. A small metaphor about seeing things in a new light, about seeing things in a different way. This is the Global South and the Global North meeting on an incredibly, probably one of the most important issues of our time. I believe the silver bullets are gender justice and education. And this, the reason they're both smiling is because Narat said, oh, I know what you're going to do with that picture. You're going to be showing it to one of your classes sometime soon back home. And of course, she was right. Do you want to know what it is? Yes. The matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now in this very room, you can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? Said Neo. That you are a slave. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, into a prison that you cannot taste, touch, or see. A prison for your mind. Quote or two from a conversation between Morpheus and Neo in The Matrix, probably one of the most underrated and overrated films of the 1990s, all at the same time. It's about the way you see. What do you see in this photo here? What do you see?
UNICEF-funded water pump.
Very specific. Nice work. I'm sure everyone from UNICEF here will be thrilled. That's great. No, nicely done. Anything else? What else do we see? No people. Good. Yep. No water. Nice. Sorry? Sorry, I can't hear you. Homes. Excellent. Yeah, a community. It's actually a health clinic, but yes, there's a community here. Nice. What else? One more. Trees. An environment, something else going on in the area. What you probably don't see, and what probably UNICEF didn't see either, and that's not to point a finger at them as an NGO, what it is to really talk about what it means to do a needs assessment, what it means to go beyond scratching the surface and to peel back those layers. Is it possible, could anyone have seen the arsenic coming from Chinese industry 1,000 miles away down the Mekong River, polluting the water table and forcing the community to do other than they are currently doing, to go into biosand water filters, to move deep inland and to drill much farther down? These issues are interconnected. These issues are interdependent, I think, in a way, and I think that's one of the things that will enable us to begin to see things in a new light. Some say that slavery is people who are enslaved by violence and held against their wills for the purposes of exploitation. I think that's true. But I wonder sometimes if these kinds of definitions actually do a disservice to what we're trying to do. Why is it that so many people today believe that slavery is a thing of the past when the practice, as we've clearly seen here this morning, is still thriving wherever poverty, social conditions, and people, human beings, can be exploited? That's here, that's there, that's north, that's south. By calling slaves slaves, have we already in some respects given in? Have we done some kind of a disservice to the other, to the human being? Have we already in some way committed some kind of crime as crazy as it sounds, against humanity. What are we going to do about globalization's dirty little secret? What is it that we bring to the table? What is it that might be getting in our way? What is it that colors everything we say, everything we think, and everything we do? Yes, this conference is about slavery. Carly brought it up. You think we might have been in cahoots. The reality is we were. She talked about a lens and seeing things and alluding to this idea of seeing things just a little bit differently than we're already seeing them. This is about the slavery of our own worldview. It's about presupposition. It's about assumption. It's about the questions that we're not willing to ask. And just before the migraine headache sets in, I'm going to take those glasses off and move right on. One of Jared Diamond's students says, "What did the person who cut down the last tree on Easter Island, what did they think? What was going through their mind when they cut down the last tree?" Some 1,000 years ago, before the demise of the culture, of the environment, of the island itself, Jared Diamond and economists refer to it as creeping normalcy. It moves in, oh, ever so slowly. What's been creeping in a normal way in our own lives? That doesn't allow us to see things in a new light. It doesn't allow us to see things in a new way. That doesn't allow us to bring a fresh perspective. How do we actually define slavery? Quote, "If there are people left alive 100 years from now, will those people of the next century be as astonished about our blindness today as we are about the blindness of the Easter Islanders?" Close quote. Seeing slavery through a lens that's contemporary, that's contextualized, that's gender-specific, that's cross-culturally sensitive is essential to moving forward in international development and with respect to international issues of any kind, it seems to me. Women's rights, children's rights, infrastructure, conflict, food security, economic conditions, all of these things have to be addressed or at least considered or maybe even at least footnoted when talking about slavery and what it is and how we're going to deal with it. So we can move beyond a conference, so we can head to the wall of action and then not forget about it in 2 weeks' time, but actually dig again a little bit deeper and once again go beyond scratching the surface. It's about seeing things differently and about our response to the issues. It is indeed about our lens. Naomi Klein says in No Logo that, quote, "It's as if the global production chain is based on the belief that workers in the South and consumers in the North will never figure out a way to communicate with each other," close quote. And now we start to see where I'm heading. I know that my time is almost gone, and that's a tragedy. I've been studying and reading philosophy for 20 years. I'm not usually gifted in brevity, so you know. There's lots I would like to talk about, and there's lots of things I would like to talk with you about specifically. Why are things the way they are and not the other way? Change, Louis Pasteur said, favors a prepared mind. What does that mean for us here today? You can tell a lot about a person by the nature of the questions that they ask. You can tell a lot about an NGO by the things that they do and what they are actually bringing to the table. And just to conclude, I want to tell you just a tiny bit about one of my favorite thinkers and how to bring this into something a little more practical. And I want to situate it in the notion, and not just the notion, but the person that is the other. Emmanuel Levinas lost his family in Auschwitz. And basically what he says, and one of the most important things he says in his writing, is that all religion and all of Western philosophy has failed because of Auschwitz. And so he says the reason that is because we've privileged knowledge, PowerPoint presentations, objective fact, things over what? The other. So for Levinas, ethics is first philosophy. He doesn't need a system. He's not interested in any kind of absolutes or any kind of objective principles. He doesn't need any metaphysics or ontology or epistemology. What he says is, the face speaks. And what the face says is, he's an Old Testament and Jewish thinker, thou shalt not kill. Immediately when you're presented with another, what we have to do is we have to begin thinking about this notion of responsibility. We are, indeed, in relationship to the other. As a former professor of mine, John Russin, writes in his book, Human Experience, quote, we will see that the issue of other people is not simply one issue among many, but is rather the issue that sets the terms for all our dealings. The other, the face, the child, the young woman, the young man. To recognize the other is to give, and in a beautiful turn of phrase, Levinas says, each of us is responsible before everyone and for everyone. And then he points the finger back at himself and says, and I more than the rest. Why are things the way they are and not some other way?